to show you, Sergeant, what appears to be some photographs that have been marked Exhibit 1A through D, and Exhibit 2A and B. Do you recognize these photographs? Yes, sir. Okay. Relating to Exhibit 1, could you tell us what Exhibit 1A and 1B are, please? Exhibit 1A is the first lineup with Defendant Richardson in the number 3 position. 2B is the second lineup with Defendant Hudson in the number 4 position. And as to the other items, that you have kind of mixed them up here. How about item 1B? What is that, please? 1B is the side view showing the right side of Mr. Richardson in the line, first lineup. And as to the other exhibits that are marked 2, which I believe would be 2B through D, what did they depict, if anything? I have 1C and 1D. Got my numbers wrong. Okay. So then is it C and D for 1 and A and B for 2? Yes, we have number 1A, B, C, D, and number 2A and B. My apologies. What do C and D depict? Number 1C is Defendant Richardson in number 3 position with a black bandana covering his nose and mouth. And number D is the same lineup again, showing the right side of Mr. Richardson. Okay, thank you. After the second lineup was completed, did you collect any slips from any of the persons who participated in the viewing of the lineup? Yes, sir, I did. And did you follow the same procedures with those slips that you indicated? You previously had done with the lineup with Mr. Richardson. There was no defense attorney there to show them to, so I maintained them and took them back to the police department with me along with the witnesses. Thank you. I have no further questions. All right. Thank you. And we will start perhaps with Mr. Margins. Did you have any questions at all? Not at this time, Your Honor. Okay, Mr. Bovee. And Detective Flynn, you have before you photographs 2A and 2B. Is that correct? Yes, sir. Now, in both of those photographs, why don't you tell us what do those photographs depict, starting with 2A? 2A, what does 2A depict? 2A depicts 6 individuals, 6 male white individuals, all close to the same height, wearing the Orange County Jail overall jumpsuits with blue, navy blue zip-up sweaters. What does 2B depict? 2B is the same, with the exception that they have black bandanas, all 6 individuals covering their nose and mouth. Okay, now, for what reason were bandanas put on the persons in 2B, if you know? Yes, that was requested because during the robbery, the suspects wore black bandanas during the robbery. By the way, so there is no misunderstanding. My client, Mr. Hudson, is in both 2A and 2B. Is that correct? Yes, he is. And is he in the same position in both those photographs? Yes, sir. With respect to the sequence which these 2 photographs or lineups were conducted, which occurred first, 2A or 2B? 2A occurred first and 2B second, so it would be correct then for us to assume, would it not, that when the 6 individuals were depicted to the 5 potential witnesses, they were brought out without any facial covering. Is that correct? That's correct. At what point was it that they were requested to put on some sort of facial cover? This is after they stood on the front position, such as in 2A. They were then instructed to take a quarter turn to the left, face the back wall, quarter turn to the left, and then face the front. After that, then they were instructed to place the bandanas over their face. And did they come out with the bandanas around their neck? No, sir. They came out with the bandana around their pocket. And when they were requested to put the bandanas on their face, they did remain on the stage, or did they leave and come back with the bandanas on? They remained on the stage and put the bandanas on at that time. So there is no misunderstanding. This lineup was conducted at a briefing room at the Orange County Jail. Yes. And there is a stage slightly elevated with a glass partition separating where the line of individuals were from people in the audience. Is that correct? Yes, sir. For how long a period of time did the individuals depicted in 2A remain in front of the prospective witnesses before the bandanas were put on? The total time would be, I'd say, 12 to 15 minutes maybe. And then after they put the bandanas on, how long were they displayed to the witnesses? Probably another 10 minutes. And then after these 2 procedures were conducted, was there some further attempt in identification made with respect to Mr. Hudson? Yes, sir. Now, the witnesses requested that different comments be made for voice clarification. So was some sort of voice procedure then conducted? Yes, sir. And can you tell us, when you say the witnesses, you mean all together, individually, or the one witness would ask for a specific comment to be made, and then each individual, starting with the number 1 person, would make that remark all the way down to the number 6. Now, I am assuming from your testimony, I am assuming that all 5 witnesses were viewing at the same time? Yes, sir. Oh, all right, continue. Which, if you recall, which witness requested which comment? I recall Jeremiah Fox requesting the individuals in the lineup make the statement something similar to, And do you know what happened to the quarters, the jar with the quarters? And then who else requested what, to the best of your recollection? I believe Mrs. Box asked, I don't recall what she asked. And did anybody else request any other comment? I don't recall, I don't believe so. And do you recall how many comments the 6 individuals were asked to make? I believe in regards to Hudson, I believe 2 comments, maybe 3. And when you say in regards to Hudson, the lineup in which Mr. Hudson participated, were all 6 individuals required to say the same thing? Yes, sir. So all 6 of those individuals said the same phrase that they were requested to say? Yes, sir. And this procedure occurred 2 or 3 times to the best of your recollection? Yes, sir. Now, Detective Flynn, before you had started this voice identification procedure, had you intended to conduct a voice identification of any sort? No, sir. I divorced myself of the proceeding and left that up to Deputy Bale. That is his job. Okay. I take it then, well, strike that. Would it be fair for us to assume, at this time, when you took these witnesses down to the Orange County Jail that afternoon, you did not know that there would be some sort of attempt made for a voice identification? No, sir, I did not know that. And when attempt was requested with respect to some sort of voice identification as to Mr. Hudson, did you confer with any of the personnel who had arranged the lineup to determine whether they had been prepared for such a procedure? No, sir. I was standing at the rear of the briefing room, and Deputy Bale was at the front of the briefing room near the glass area where the witnesses were sitting. I take it that when you had talked to the personnel at the jail requesting the lineup, you of course didn't tell them when you requested the lineup there would be a voice lineup also requested. Is that correct? No, sir. I had no knowledge any questions were going to be asked. Do you have any knowledge whatsoever as to what attempts, if any, were made to ensure that the individuals that participated in the voice lineup were all of roughly the same tone or pitch of voice? I had no way of knowing that. Do you have any idea what attempts, if any, were made to ensure that any voice lineup in which Mr. Hudson participated would be a comparable voice lineup? I have no knowledge of that. Now, when the voice lineup procedure was conducted, were there any tape recorders present or any other devices that can preserve the identification procedure? No, there was not.
Sorry, thanks.
Sorry. Okay, 204 voice for 15 minutes. Question by plaintiff's attorney. Ready? Earlier, we were discussing the check register and some of the checks shown on that register that went for your benefit. The check number 538 to Richard Grotus, that was at least intended for your benefit. As for a portion of the property, yes. Would it also be your testimony that the remaining $38,000 that was paid to Richard came out of the proceeds from the sale of your house? Yes. So there were the 2 Maple Street properties, the Elm Street property, and a total of $38,000 to Richard of checks for your benefit? Yes. Other than those monies and normal day-to-day living expenses, to the best of your knowledge, the rest of the money went to Arlen Grotus. Objection, Your Honor. It's a leading question. Sustained. Other than the rental properties, the Elm Street property, the money to be paid Richard, and your day-to-day living expenses, can you, to the best of your knowledge, tell us where the remainder of the monies were spent? Well, on the construction and wherever Arlen needed money. And do you know if any motor vehicles were purchased? Yes. Were those purchased by cash? Most of them. Was Arlen working during the time 1985, 1986? At the tail end of 86, he started working? Yes, off and on. Move to admit the sequential check register as Exhibit 12 in evidence. Do you want to be heard on that? Yes. We will not argue now. We'll reserve it, and I'll hear arguments later. All right, that's fine. At some time in the course of your relationship, at any time during the course of your relationship, did Arlen become physically abusive to you? Yes. Can you tell us when the first occurred? I'm not sure of the exact date. It started happening when the money started running out. That money received from the proceeds of your house, that money running out? Yes. What was the first incident that you recall that you would classify as abusive behavior? Physically abusive in any way? I'm going to object. May we have a conference at the side bench, please? Very well. Mrs. Wing, Could you describe for us the first event in which the conduct which you claim to be abusive occurred? We just had a conversation looking at some old notes of yours, Mr. Crafts and I, and the stipulation was that the first such event was, if indeed it occurred, the notes indicate the first day, which you have a note is July 1st, 1986. Again, the stipulation is not that anything happened. The stipulation is that the first note that you have is July 1, 1986. I think you correctly recited that very well. Would you describe the first event that you recall? Pardon me? Describe the first abuse event that you recall. The first one that it was a large event, so it kind of shocked me, so it's one that comes to memory. I'm not sure how it started, but I know how it ended. Arlen just went crazy and started. We were in the bedroom and he lost his temper and he proceeded to hit the bedroom door with his fist over and over. And we had a bedroom door that had a glass window in it, and it was an old house, and he bashed the window until there was no glass left. And he proceeded to work on the door, and he messed the door up real bad and shredded that, and I was cornered in the room. I couldn't get out because he was in the doorway. So I got way back on the bed against the far wall as far as I could get. And there was an ironing board sitting up in the room over by where he was at. I hadn't put it away yet, so he picked it up and flung it at me, missed my head barely. Might have even skinned it, I don't remember. It was very close. And he came at me and choked me, and I don't remember what happened after that. That was the big outburst. Did you subsequently have a discussion with him about those events? He would refuse. I tried to, and he refused to talk about them. He acted like he didn't want to admit that it happened. Objection, Your Honor. Listen to the question and only answer the question put to you. So we'll start with no question pending. During this event, did you become concerned for your safety? Yes. It was a very scary. He caught me off guard. I never have been in that kind of a situation. Objection, non-responsive. Again, Mrs. Wayne, please just answer the question put to you. After this event, did any other events occur which you would consider abusive or assaultive? Yes. Thank you. Would you describe the next such event that you remember? I'm not real sure of the order of these. I was in a very confused state by that time. Objection, non-responsive. The very confused state will be stricken. I don't know that the precise order is essential. Can you tell us the next event that comes to mind? Okay. Well, there was an incident in the second bedroom, which we referred to as the office because I had my desk in there and my file cabinet. I believe that one started in the bedroom. A lot of times they did. And I went into the office to get away from him and shut the door. And he broke the door open. And I just remember he threw a banjo at my television that was in that room and put a gash in it. And I think it ended up with him strangling me. He did that at the end a lot. But there were two different occasions something happened in the office. Another time he threw something and broke a window out of the house. And there was another time he dragged me down the hallway by my feet. All I remember, I was hanging on to we didn't have closet doors, the corner of the closet, which was right by the doorway, trying to keep from being dragged down the hall because we had this old carpet that was falling apart full of staples. All right. Objection, non-responsive. Move to strike. Well, the last sentence will be ordered stricken. You were describing an incident where he attempted to pull you down the hall outside the bedroom. He did pull me down the hall. He broke me loose of the closet. Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive. Sustained. You can ask what happened next. Something like that. All right. What happened next? He pulled me down the hall, and I was worried about getting torn by the staples in the carpet. That's all I could think about. I didn't get torn by the staples, but I got bruised all up and down one side. And when these events occurred, did it occur to you to leave the relationship? Pardon? Did it occur to you to leave the relationship? I didn't know what to think about the whole situation. He kept telling me, objection, non-responsive. Sustained, he can ask whether or not they had a discussion. And did you have a discussion? I forgot what we were talking about. With regard to potentially leaving your relationship, did you discuss the situation with Arlen? Yes, it was brought up different times after things happened. The first one that you can recall, what was that discussion about? He said anything. He would say that it wouldn't happen again and that he loved me. And did he make that type of comment on more than one occasion? Yes. Were there any such occasions where he made different comments in reference to those things? Well, the question is, did he, every time when these incidents arose, say, I love you, it won't happen again? Or were there times where he reacted differently? Most of the time, he would refuse to acknowledge it happened. Were there any incidents, abusive incidents, that you have not told us about? Yes. Would you please tell me the next one you recall? Can I, describe how it came about? How did the next incident come about? Just answer that. Well, we had been arguing. I don't remember what about. And he went downstairs. Up to this point, he had the habit of taking off for a couple of days. I wanted him to stay there and work things out. And so I followed him downstairs to the car. He got in the car, shut the door, and I reached. The window was rolled up, and I wanted to, say, don't leave. And so I reached for the handle, and the door. I could see him reach and open the door, and so I started stepping back. But the door flung open, and he just burst out of the car real fast towards me, and he hit me with both hands and knocked me down. And I started to raise up, and everything went dizzy, and I blacked out for a period of time. You lost consciousness? Yes. What do you recall when you regained consciousness? He was gone. You were in the same spot? Yes, in the driveway. What did you do? I tried getting up, and I got very nauseous, and I couldn't get up. Did you require medical treatment? Well, I went to a doctor, but not right away. Did you have pains and bruises from that incident for any length of time? Objection. Overruled. You may answer. I had a concussion. Objection. Move to strike. All right, that will be stricken. Will you remind the jury to disregard that comment? Be admonished to disregard it. Now, that comment would require a medical opinion. So if you can give physical symptoms that you can testify to of your own knowledge that you have, fine. All right. I had extreme dizziness to the point I couldn't stand up, and extreme nausea, much worse than car sickness, and I also had a lot of pain in my feet. I could not walk. Any other incidents of abusive behavior? There was another one after that one where I was in the house, and I don't recall what started the reaction, but Arlen, the result anyway, was that Arlen came at me in the same manner, and I was in the hallway. He came from the direction of the bedroom, and he knocked me down. And I think I hit the same spot because I had this big balloon on the back of my head in the same area. I had the same symptoms, the dizziness. Any more? Well, there's a lot of, there's more to that one. Can I? Certainly. Elaborate? Now, that second time I was pushed down backwards like that, I told him I was hurt, that I thought I had a second concussion. And he said, objection, Your Honor. And that's what she told him. She's just relating the conversation. Overruled. But I was still laying on the floor, and he came. He kicked me and said I was a piece of garbage and that he hoped I would die. And then he went in the bedroom, and he shut the door and locked it. And I was there for a while, and I don't know how long. I had to go to the bathroom, so I tried to crawl into the bathroom. And I managed to get into the bathroom, but I was still on the floor. And the bedroom door pops open, and he comes in and straddles me and urinates in the toilet, splattering all over me. And I don't remember what happened after that. I had been through some hard times with him, so we were on the way to a restaurant to have breakfast. And Arlen was crying in the car, and I was crying in the car, and that makes him very mad. And he slammed the brakes on and proceeded to strangle me on the side of the car with his arm like so. And then when he got through doing that, he made me go on to the restaurant with him and go in, and he insisted that I order something and sit there and try to act normal and eat. But there were a lot of smaller ones like that. And there's one other that I had an incident in Simi when we were going to work on the house, when we were painting and cleaning the Simi house. And I had got to where I was crying fairly regularly, and I was crying. And we were getting in bed, or we had just gotten in bed, and he smothered me, and he put both of his hands over my face, over my mouth and nose, and I couldn't breathe. And he was sitting on top of me, holding me down, and he did that for a long time. I thought that was it, that I was being killed. So I got to the point where I relaxed, and after I relaxed a little while, he got off. And of course I cried then. At some time, I think we'll take a recess now and resume tomorrow morning at 9. Mr. Histon, do I understand that you cannot be here in the morning? That's correct, and we will have a witness called out of order. My understanding is Mr. Johnson will examine the witness under 776. We will have witnesses out of order. Do you have any other witnesses too? If we could do that, Mr. Johnson indicated he would prefer to start. He could call Richard under 776 if we could request that Richard Grotus be here. Is there any reason both defendants can't be here at 9 in the morning? We'll be here. They will be directed to be here. Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow we will be over in the main courthouse in Department 2. Department 2 is located on the northwest end of that building. And the bailiff, will you be here? I won't be there. There will be a bailiff there. You'll see Department 2, and there will be a bailiff. When you are seated in the jury box, the seating will be in the same order, except the two alternate jurors will be on the extreme end. There will be a back seat and a front seat, and I'll explain to the bailiff how to seat you. Who is going to gather these notepads? As I indicated, no one is going to read what you have written in the notepad. They will be closed and available to you tomorrow morning. We are in recess until tomorrow morning at 9. Same admonitions apply that I gave you before. Each member of the jury and the alternate are present, as is our counsel. Did each juror receive notebooks? When you leave on recesses or for any break, you can either leave your notepads on your seat or you can put them in the bin. In the back row, they are behind you immediately to the right. In the front, they're immediately in front of you. There's no place for the alternates, so they'll have to leave them on the seat. It was agreed between counsel and court, since Mr. Histon was not here this morning and able to continue with his examination of the plaintiff, that Mr. Johnson would call a witness in effect out of order. Mr. Johnson, thank you. Pursuant to 776 of the Evidence Code, we'd like to call one of the adverse parties. That would be Mr. Richard Grotus. We would ask permission to do that. Very well. The law permits an adverse party to be called by opposing counsel and to be examined just as if you were being cross-examined. Sir, if you would come forward and stand behind the court reporter, raise your right hand and stand to be sworn. You do solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes, please state your name. My name is Richard Grotus. You may examine. Sir, you're the brother of Arlen. That's correct. You're the two defendants named in this action. Is that correct? That's correct. Just a little background information in terms of how you relate to the facts and circumstances of this case, sir. How long have you had a business relationship with your brother with respect to the properties in question? We never did have a say-so business. We started out as a hobby, and we were working toward that direction, but we never really got together as far as actual business. Now, the cars we worked on were our own cars, and we worked on them as a hobby. Now, let me back up a little. Maybe I confused you in my question, so let's start over again. You purchased property with your brother, is that right? That's correct. What's the first piece of property you purchased with your brother? Simi Valley. Now, do you have any idea when you purchased that property? I believe it was around 1972, somewhere in that period. When you purchased that property, I assume, as joint tenants with equal shares of 50 for you and 50 for your brother. It started out with 3 partners, and sometime later we bought the third person out, and me and my brother assumed 50%. $180, 4 boys for 5 minutes. Question by plaintiff's attorney. Ready? And you owned that property to live in or rent it out. We were living in it pretty much full time at that time in 1980. And I assume that during the course of what? You lived in there about how many years? Approximately 10 years. And during the course of those 10 years, sir, you probably had certain mortgage payments that you made on that property, correct? And probably certain interest deductions that you would take based upon the interest that you paid on that property. Is that right? More than likely, right. And you probably would have to keep some kind of records with respect to how much interest you paid on that property, is that correct? Yeah. And you kept those records? Most of them, yeah. I think my accountant took care of that for me. But as far as between your brother and yourself, pretty much, so you were the record keeper at that period of time? Yes. At any time, did it change? Yes, it did, but not, I always took care of the first mortgage payment. Later on down the lane, when we took a second mortgage out to put it toward Cherry Valley property, later on down the line, I let him handle the second mortgage payment. And when you say let him handle it, what do you mean? Okay, what I mean is when we first started out, I believe it was in April of '84, somewhere in there, I think I made the first payment on that. And so after that, you allowed Mr. Arlen to keep he paid me his half of the payment. Let me interrupt just a minute. You can't both talk at the same time. The court reporter is not able to report two people talking at the same time. May I make a comment to my client? Yes. The court reporter seems to have a little trouble keeping up with you. Could you slow down your responses a little bit? Yes, go ahead. I think you were telling us that your brother, Arlen, kept the records after you made a second mortgage on the Simi Valley property, correct? And that was sometime in '84, right? But prior to that time, you kept the records? That's right. By the way, do you know your brother by any other name? No. You never heard the name Daryl? No. Just kidding around maybe. You never referred to him as Daryl? No. You never called him Daryl Beal? No. Did you ever call him Hero? Yeah. Is that a nickname? Yeah. He's Hero 1 and you're Hero 2? Right. Kind of like brotherly bond? Yeah. You guys are close? We pretty much, most brothers don't. We get along and trust each other. You communicated and always kept up that throughout your course? No. Never distrusted? No. You never distrusted Arlen in any way? No. I've always trusted his judgment pretty much, to be honest. Okay. So at some point in time, you had the Simi Valley property. At some point in time, you decide that maybe you want to expand and buy some more property. Is that right? The reason we bought the property in Cherry Valley, we both had a large collection of cars and we were paying storage for these cars. And it was starting to get a pretty high monthly payment. And we both received inheritance from our uncle. You both received an inheritance, that's correct. When did you receive those inheritances? Prior to the purchase of Cherry Valley. I'm not sure of the time, but it was prior to July of '82. Sometime prior to that. So sometime prior to July of 1982, your brother and you got an inheritance.